I see so many people nowadays who have dreams but are just too afraid to chase them. You hear it all the time. People tell you, oh, you gotta go chase your dream, go after it. Yet at the same time, they don't want you to do the stuff nobody else does. They want you to do the same as everybody else, which most likely is not what you want to do. They tell you to go to uni, they tell you to get a job, they tell you to have a family, settle down and do all this stuff, which more often than not isn't your dream. So it's this weird juxtaposition of, on the one hand, yeah, chase your dream, but only chase it as long as you're still on the path I want you to go down. That's your parents, your teachers, the people in the school, your friends to some extent. So I have a friend who does photography, and he started, I think it was a few months ago, but I used to do photography too. And when he showed me the first photos, he was like, oh, Miro, take a look at these. I just took them last week. They're my first ones. And I was expecting to see something that I could say, oh, yeah, you could fix the exposure on that one, maybe the composition. These are photography terms. You don't need to know them. But when he showed me the photos, I was amazed at how good they were. The guy has incredible talent for taking photos. And so we start talking. He shows me the photos. I didn't even believe he made the photos. I thought he asked someone else to take the photos for him. And I asked him, hey, so do you want to pursue this? And he said, yeah, I'll start taking photos. He did, and he would show me the photos he would take. And I think at one point I floated the idea for him to go to an exhibition, to show his work, maybe sell it, make some money from it, see how the business of being a photographer is. And he really liked the idea. I also told him to start an Instagram account, which he has started. But it's been 2 to 3 months since that happened, and he hasn't been to an exhibition. And I have a bad feeling that's not because he's too busy or because someone like his parents tell him he can't do that or something or any of that. I think it's rather because he's too scared. He's one example. I have another guy in mind too, who have these big dreams and they actually want to do something with their lives. They want to achieve great things, but then over time, by people repeatedly telling them, no, you can't do that, you need to do this and that, they just give up on them. Not give up entirely, but just enough to suffocate it. What I mean by that is the guy still takes photos. The other guy I have in mind still thinks about starting a business. He said he'll start one when he grows older and more experienced in all this. And that's fine. You would think, oh, that's good. But it's in this dangerous place where they don't quit it enough to where they can realize, oh, I've stopped chasing my dream. I'm just settled. So they can still lie to themselves and say, oh, yeah, well, I'm still kind of doing this. But they're not actually doing the work that's required to get where they want to go. So with my friend who does photography, that would be go into an exhibition, which he doesn't do. I have a third friend who was similar. When he was younger, he wanted to do acting. And over time, he just didn't do that anymore. Or doesn't want to. And that's the tricky part is, I think with some people, it's obviously lack of courage. But with other people, it's just they grow out of it. And so it's really important to figure out which one of those two you are. If you're like the latter, who just grew out of it and realized, well, it's kind of a shallow ambition because I wanted people's approval or something like that, then by all means, no one's going to force you to chase a dream that isn't really yours. Perhaps it was implanted by someone else. Not maliciously, you just pick up on stuff. But if you're the former, where you really want to do something, but at the same time, you're still going to go to uni and you're still going to get a job and you're not going to try it out as an artist because you're scared of maybe a conversation with your parents, or maybe you're scared of the disapproval of your parents, of your family, of your teachers, which is definitely there. But if you really want something, I would really put into question whether those people's approval is worth living a life that isn't true to yourself. Whether those people's approval, those half a dozen people maybe, their approval, whether that's worth not living the life you want to live. I'm going to venture to guess that's not the case, but that's a question for you to answer. And the thing is, even if they disapprove of what you're doing, they would disapprove of you anyway, most of the time. For example, with your parents, right? If you say, oh, I'm not going to uni and I'm going to try and become a photographer and work at McDonald's to support myself whilst I go to exhibitions and do what I can, they're going to say, oh no, Timmy, you should go to uni because this and that, yeah. Like one day later, the next day, they basically forgot about it. They might bring it up whenever you have a parent-teacher meeting or whatever, but other than that, they'll forget about it. And whether you tell them or not, they will still get upset at you for other reasons. Like you didn't wash the dishes, you didn't clean your room, you didn't do whatever. So it doesn't change that much. People don't care that much about what you do and you don't. Well, I mean, obviously they care about you, like your parents don't want you to fail. But if they're looking out for you, which most of them are, they don't want to see their son or daughter fail or at something they care about or become just a homeless person. They care for you, but you have to realize that just because they care for you doesn't mean what they say is true 100% of the time. And so when it comes to chasing after your dream, something else that's important to keep in mind is that the only thing that actually matters is doing the work. Talking about doing the work is not doing the work. So with my friend who was going to do the exhibitions, talking about, oh yeah, we should go to this big city and do the exhibition and we'll do this and that, all of that stuff is not doing the work. Thinking about doing the work is not doing the work. Strategizing on the best way to do the work is still not doing the work. The only thing that is doing the work is actually doing the work. Reaching out to the people at the exhibition, buying a bus ticket, and then actually going to the exhibition. If you're a photographer, the real work, although yes, it's also taking photos, I mean, I think at this point it's mostly building a base of followers for your work, because otherwise there's no point in taking photos. And with most dreams, I think about it now, I don't think it's so much the act itself as much as the judgment from other people, not from your parents, but I mean from the people rating your work. So if I think about my friend who takes photos, he still takes photos because that's not that scary, but going out at a fair with your photos put up on the wall and waiting for people to pass by and look at them is definitely a lot scarier. And that's why you don't do it. If you want to be a YouTuber, right, scripting the videos, making the thumbnails, all of this stuff is not, it feels productive, and to some extent it is, but if it means you're delaying actually publishing a video which invites judgment from other people, then it's not doing the real work. If you want to start a business, developing your product and all of that is great, but none of that matters unless you actually go out and try and sell the product to see what people think. Very often the most important work and the one you're most scared of is the one that requires other people in the process, because that invites judgment and we're scared of it. That being said, following your dream does not always have to come at odds with your family or with a job. So for example, we'll keep going with my friend who does photography. If he only wants to do it as a hobby, then I wouldn't consider it a dream, right? I'm going off of the basis that his dream in life is becoming a photographer, a professional photographer, which it definitely seems like is the case, because you wouldn't make an Instagram profile to post your work if you weren't trying to be a photographer, right? You just take photos. I mean, that's what I did. I never wanted to be a photographer, so I never made an Instagram account. That being said, it doesn't have to come at odds with your family or having a job. So for example, it's never too late. Say in 10 years, right? He's gotten his degree, he's in a job, and he still does photography. It wouldn't be too late to suddenly start going to exhibitions. His work would probably be much better, and he's more mature in all of this, and so he can have his day job, but then on the weekends he goes to exhibitions, which is when most people go to exhibitions anyway. He can still have a family and be a photographer at the same time. Many people do it. So it's not an excuse that you have a job or you have a family or that you have responsibilities. It's about how much you care. And the other side of the coin to that is if you care so much about it, then most likely the idea of a family or a job would not sound as interesting to you as completely risking everything you've got to try your best to make it as a painter, business, whatever you want to do. If you care about it enough, at that point, you'd probably be willing to lose sleep over it. Whereas if you want to live more of a balanced life and you want to have a side hustle of photography, in that case, you can still figure it out, but you just won't take it to the same extent. All of this goes well with an idea I've had, which is that not trying is often easier. Not trying a PR is easier than trying a PR, not only because trying a personal record in the gym is hard, but also because of the potential for failure and embarrassment, although there is really none, perceived embarrassment from other people. So often, not trying is easier because then you can say you never really fail. You can protect your ego and your self-image by saying that you didn't fail, but in reality, you just didn't try. So you failed anyway. That's the funny thing is, people think that if you don't try something, you can't fail. Whereas if you really want to do something and you don't try it because you don't want to fail, you're failing by default. The only way you would be able to succeed is if you actually tried. You only have one life, so do not miss your chance. Don't live your life by somebody else's standards. I would rather die knowing I tried than not having tried at all. With most things, even if it doesn't work out, say my friend who does photography, say he goes to an exhibition, people throw tomatoes on his work and say it's trash and kick him out of the exhibition, which again, most likely will not happen, but say it does. I think 80 years later, when he has a family and kids and a nice, well, not anymore, but he had a nice job and a great career, if he were to look back at his younger self, he would be extremely glad he tried the exhibition and saw that it didn't work and that perhaps he wasn't actually that good, which I don't think is the case, but perhaps he wasn't and it just wasn't for him. And then he just stopped. He would rather know that than reach the end of his life, even if he still has the same loving family and great job, and never know what could have happened had he gone to the exhibition. Because how do you know whether it will be something you regret or it's something that just doesn't matter? Will I regret not doing hard drugs when I'm on my deathbed? Probably not, because it's not really a matter of courage. It's just I don't see the point. I don't want to do them. So I won't regret that. And I know the downsides of them, or the potential downsides. I think a good way to know is the reason why you don't want to do it. And in this case, it's really important not to lie to yourself. You can go extremely far in life just by not lying to yourself and others. You can still get quite far by lying to others. Don't do it. But the moment you lie to yourself about something, so saying, oh, I don't actually want that, or it's not really a matter of courage, it's just I don't have the time, all of those things, that's the moment all potential improvement is lost. Because the moment you lie to yourself about whose responsibility it is about the reason why you're not doing something, that's the moment you give up your ability to improve. If my friend wants to go to an exhibition because he wants to become a photographer, and that's a great way to start, but then he tells himself, no, I don't want to go to the exhibition, not because I'm scared, but because I didn't even want to be a photographer in the first place, because I just want to have this be my hobby. He lied to himself, and therefore he will never go to an exhibition, because the belief is now in his mind that he doesn't go to exhibitions because he doesn't want to. Whereas if he knew, he didn't lie to himself, and he knew, I don't go to exhibitions, that doesn't change, but that's because I'm scared, then at one point he would realize, well, what am I so scared of? And he would go. You can imagine that the guy who knows that he's scared would eventually do it when he realizes it's not that scary, or even if it is that scary, it's not worth the potential regret later on. You often realize that the downside of trying something is extremely low. Most things don't kill you. If they bankrupt you, you can just try again. Bankruptcy is kind of literally designed to be like a reset button, so you just try again. Often the consequences or the downsides aren't that bad. Very often the fear comes from the anticipation of it and not from actually doing it. It's like when you go cliff jumping into a lake. You can try this, obviously into a lake. You'll find that right as you're at the edge of the cliff, if you're quite high up, you'll wonder whether you should really be doing this. No, maybe it's not even that good of an idea. That's just fear speaking, especially if someone's done it right before you and it's not 100 meters above water. But then as soon as you jump, and then especially when you land in the water, you just realize, wait, it wasn't that scary after all. Why was I making up all these excuses to make myself not do this? Well, it's obviously your biology just misfiring. That's something else that's quite interesting is when you realize that very often your fear isn't based in any sound reasoning, it's just biological mechanisms that have evolved over millions of years just misfiring. So in the example of cliff jumping, your body naturally has, height sensors and danger sensors and whatever. And so it thinks, well, jumping off this cliff can lead to death or something like that, or disability. So it's going to keep you away from the edge of the cliff, because the guy who didn't have that historically might have jumped off and injured himself. He wouldn't have kids, which would then have the same genes as him. So we are the descendants of those who did not jump off the cliff. But if you realize that it's simply just biological wiring that went wrong, it's a lot easier to realize, well, why don't I just do it then? Don't be bogged down by stigma. Live your own life. Don't worry about what others people think about it. Again, that's just biological misfiring, because we used to live in tribes and other people's opinions mattered a lot to your survival. And one thing is, it's not cringe to try and fail. What's cringe are the people on the sidelines who just put you down. They're scared to do it because if you do it, or even try, it removes all their potential excuses. There's a few ideas in there. The first one is very often I don't know why it's the case, but very often, imagine you're with your friends, especially if you're younger, and you see someone in your class, maybe someone, a coworker, and you find a video of them online doing juggling routines or something. You'd probably kind of laugh at them. You're like, oh, what are they trying to do? You hear it very often with a lot of, say, podcasters, creators in general, that were often discouraged or laughed at by their peers when they were starting out. It's almost like they're trying to drag you back down. Very often people quit because they're like, well, they're laughing at me, this isn't worth it. But in reality, what you're doing by actually trying is not cringe. It's not embarrassing. Well, it might be, but you just got to push through it, because eventually you'll be good. When you get good, you become successful, and suddenly when you're successful, no one laughs at you. That's pretty weird, isn't it? So that's one thing. Don't be afraid to try. Be afraid to not try and then live with the consequences of that, which is what could have been. But then also, people often put you down. Some people just out of malice. But also, I think often people put you down because if you try something, and especially if you succeed, monetarily, whatever it might be, it exposes the fact that there is really no reason why they also can't have that, especially if they've expressed the same desire you have. I realized this recently with someone who the exact things they tell me I shouldn't be doing is the things I figured out secretly want in themselves, like qualities and values and everything. And the funny thing is, it reminds me of, I don't know if it's a quote, but it's someone basically said, why would you listen to someone who's thought about an idea for 10 seconds and take their judgment over yours, who's been thinking about it for years maybe? So if you've been thinking about a business or whatever you've been thinking about, you probably think about it a lot longer than your friend who you go to and you say, oh yeah, I've been thinking to start this thing or that. And then they just think about it for 5 seconds and they say, oh no, that would never work. You've thought about it for maybe 10, 100 times longer than they have, yet you take their judgment of it above yours. If you wrote a test and you hand it to 2 examiners, one of them takes 10 hours to grade it, and the other guy takes 10 seconds to grade your entire 5-page paper, whose grading would you trust more? Whose criticism would you trust more, and whose compliments would you trust more? If one of them wrote, oh, this is horrible, but the punctuation is good, whereas the other guy said, this is amazing, it's actually quite well written, but it just takes some time to read through it. The punctuation is very good, but this answer could be better. Obviously, the second guy put more thought into it, more nuanced, and obviously you would take the opinion of the guy who thought about it more over the opinion of the guy who thought about it or graded your paper for 10 seconds. It's not about making the right choice, it's about being intentional. I've realized that very often, whether the decision is right or wrong doesn't matter as much as the fact that you made it. If you made it, right? And if you didn't, then even if you're right, it just doesn't feel as well. If you cheat and then win, it doesn't feel too well compared to if you play your best and you actually play and it's a fair game and then you lose. So it's not about making the right choice. It's not about, oh, is going to the exhibition actually the right choice? It's about it being your choice. If you want to become a photographer, If you want to be an entrepreneur or a creator, it's not about whether, this is the right career move at this moment in my life. It's about whether you want to do it, and then hopefully having the courage to actually going and doing it. What I would think about is, what is the thing that you want but are delaying because you're scared of failing, or scared of people's judgments, or scared of whatever you might be scared of? What is something that you want but are delaying because you're scared of failing? Just like cliff jumping, you realize it's not as scary as it first seems.